Hi there everyone, I'm Matt Roberts and this is the second in a series of interviews that I'm doing for the Barnsley Startup Meetup, where I talk to an upcoming speaker for the meetups about what they're talking about, but then also a little bit about what they do and how they came to be in the startup scene. With me today is Mark Cody from Code Properties. He's worked in everything from building through to deep tech through to startups, and that's why he's here today really, is that he's worked quite frequently or worked quite a lot with startups over the last year or so in and around the Sheffield City region, and so yeah, he's going to be giving a talk on specifically sales within startups and how startups can best go about making the most out of when they choose to go for either bringing a salesperson on or how best to build their startup strategy, their sales strategy. So without any further ado, Mark, welcome.
Thanks.
Would you like to give us a little bit of an intro about who you are, what you do?
Yeah, sure. So, no, thanks, Matt. I appreciate the intro. My name's Mark, as Matt's mentioned. I've spent the last sort of 13 years in the property game, doing sort of various things from small renovation, development. We then kind of pivoted into the kind of prop tech space, which is, it's been super exciting for me. Give me a lot of opportunity to meet, startup people within Sheffield and South Yorkshire region, which has been incredible. And what I saw, amongst that journey, and certainly from starting a business from an idea and taking it through to scale and sort of multi-million revenue, we found there's certainly a number of patterns within the kind of sales strategy and sales formula, and that this is something that I kind of want to pass on to the people coming to this event. Certainly a lot of my lessons and mistakes that I've made over the years. And hopefully let people avoid those for themselves as well.
So that was going to be one of my questions. It was like, how do you, or have you got any advice for startups around, making that first step into bringing a sales team on, or at least sales individuals on specifically within their business? Because it can be quite a challenging time for a business in terms of making the wrong choice can set you back quite a way. So are there any common strategies that you might kind of provide for people or can suggest for people if they're looking to bring on business development or sales within a startup?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a really interesting one, and one I've seen, certainly recently a lot more of. I've spoken to a lot of startups within the region. I think for me, the biggest thing is, for every founder, they need to be, whether they want to or not, a salesperson. Ultimately, they're going to be selling the dream to future employees. They've got to sell that dream to investors. So these sales skills and the skills around that ultimately need to be useful throughout the team, and certainly within the founding team. I think a lot of it comes from bringing people on with different sets of skills that you have that are always better at whatever that thing might be than you. I think that's definitely key. But when you're actually looking at the sales as a strategy, there's definitely a right and a wrong time to bring in a sales team. I think the founding team need to be and certainly that early stage, potentially bootstrap, pre-seed stage, need to be hitting the market for validation, and that's something I think they can do within that core team. And then once you've got a bit of validation, once you've spoken to enough customers to try and understand that your solution or what you're trying to build actually fits, and then you can then continue to scale. That's really, for me, when you start building that sales team and that sales engine. Yeah. But you don't want to hire people in necessarily just to be able to kind of sit and do that market validation for you. So, for me, it's kind of, you need to understand all the mechanisms and methodologies around that. And so a lot of that is putting yourself out of that comfort zone, where it's a scary place to be, but it's definitely one that I recommend doing.
I mean, it's stereotypical, isn't it? But I imagine that you've probably seen more of those introverted type sort of people within the tech side of startups and things like that, where they're immensely talented at the technology, and the product, and they understand that really well, but actually the message for how to actually present that to a customer, why should they have that, what's it going to do for them, how's it going to make their life better, and in reality, where's it going to save them money, or where's it going to make them money? You know, have you found yourself in a role where you're actually coaching founders to be that?
Yeah, definitely. And that's, something I'm doing, quite actively at the moment, and thoroughly enjoying it, actually, having that helicopter view over the business while they're kind of in the day-to-day grind, because sometimes you don't see what's going on necessarily when you're in the zone. But yeah, certainly from a sales point, and from, going back to the original point, from an introverted point, I think a lot of it really comes down to trying to understand how your customers are feeling, and really, huge amount of decision making from a buying point is emotional. So you need to understand how they're feeling, what the kind of at the point of buying, what's going through their minds, and the only way you do that is by speaking to people and getting some feedback. So for me, that can be a group of your friends, and you don't necessarily have to be selling to those, but you could be initially getting some feedback. Do you know if there's anybody else who might be interested in this? Could
Absolutely.
you do an introduction? For me, when you're looking at the first 5 to 10 customers, I always say start with kind of your warm network, because ultimately they know you, they like you, they trust you. You don't have to build that, but they could give you a referral, an introduction, or even they might end up being a customer. So that's always a great place for me to start.
It's definitely a contact sport, isn't it? So sales, like you say, you're not going to find out whether your product or your service is desirable without going to speak to people, without picking up that phone, or without physically going and meeting people. And definitely face-to-face is so invaluable. I mean, I know, and I guess actually that's a really good question, is with the ascendancy of Teams, Zoom, Google Hangouts, or Meet. I'm going to sound really, really unknowledgeable there, but video conferencing basically throughout the pandemic, and how that's kind of taken off over the last few years, or stayed with us over the last few years. What's your advice there? Is it best to start with Teams and then move, or like start with video conferencing and then move to a face-to-face, or is it how can people use that tool within their arsenal?
Yeah, I think it's one that definitely has to be used. I don't think you can narrow it down just to kind of face-to-face. I think that's fantastic, and that's ultimately probably the best if possible. But I think certainly how globalization and your customers might not be even in this continent, you need to be able to use this technology. So it still allows you to kind of get those relationships, cultivate those, give you opportunity to maybe have events where you go and have a mutual ground where you meet. But for me, certainly being able to use them, and again within your team, if you're growing a team, they don't have to be UK based, they don't have to be Sheffield based or Barnsley based. They can be around the country, and I think being able to utilize those technologies is important. Does that kind of...
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just I think it's more from my own experiences is that it's great to get that initial contact point. It's almost as good as face-to-face in terms of you can see someone. Yeah. There's a face to a company. This is what I was saying with Ben Hawley in the last interview that I was doing for the Startup Meetup, was, certainly for startups, businesses do business with people, or people do business with people. And so therefore seeing a face to the company and being able to see some character coming through, see some passion coming through, makes a huge difference. But then after that initial kind of series of meetings, maybe there's nothing that covers off, or there's nothing that replaces a face-to-face meeting, like in person. And like you say, it doesn't have to be kind of like arranged necessarily. We'll go to your office or this, that, and the other. It could be at a trade show, it could be at something else, but having that opportunity to physically be in the same space as someone makes a huge difference to outcomes for sales, future sales.
100%. And, you know, and I think you touched on a really good point there. And I think this is where, for me, all founders, you know, and especially within the kind of startup region, should be trying to create a personal brand and associate themselves, you know, with whatever it is that they're putting their flag in the sand to say, this is what, you know, what I'm presenting.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, if, you know, people watch things like this, or they, you know, they hear a podcast, or they read a book that you've created, or, you know, a LinkedIn post, they're all, you know, the psychological side of that is they're building a picture and an image and getting some credibility and trust with you. Yeah. That as and when that opportunity arises, that they then do get the opportunity to meet you,
yeah.
You've already kind of built that level of trust up with them as well. So you know, a lot of things is can be done sort of, you know, before that point.
Yeah, well. Yeah. There's groundwork to be done. Like there was something that was really just like it was on the tip of my tongue, and it just popped into my brain. It's gone. I could cut this all out in the end. It's fine.
You should keep it.
Let's look at stuff like, because obviously you've worked in or you've run like multiple different businesses in different spaces and things like that, and you've had experience with different businesses. What's your feeling for or outlook for the Sheffield City region as far as startups go? Is it buoyant? Is it, you know, like are there challenges?
Yeah, I think there's definitely challenges, but I think there's a lot of exciting people working incredibly hard to make a difference in the region, which is amazing. You know, you've got buildings like what's going on at the Olympic Legacy Park, you've got things happening at Sheffield Tech Parks. You know, these are great examples of what people are trying to do with, you know, the innovation zone, innovation district. There's obviously, you know, external funding coming in to try and support businesses like this, but for me, you know, trying to increase the likelihood of successes for startups is paramount to the, you know, the future economic proof of the city and where you know, where the region goes. I mean, ultimately, you know, the businesses that are starting off today could be hiring our children in, you know, 20 years time, and I think that's the way we kind of need to see those things as real long-term investments, not, you know, short kind of spurts on, we'll throw a little bit of money over here, real, you know, defined kind of 10, 15, 20, 50 plus year goals with where we want to take the, you know, the region and how we kind of collaborate. I think
with sustained funding for that as well, right?
That's it.
Because it does come down to funding. I've just remembered what I was thinking of, I thought of earlier, which is, how do you coach teams or build a strategy for startups where the expectation for sales is that you go and speak to someone, you make a sale, whereas actually, certainly my experience is that you can be 18 months, 24 months in building to the point where someone signs on the dotted line, or you know, you get something over the line. Is there any advice you can give people for that?
I think with sales, you've ultimately got to be continually building your pipeline. I think it's not you know, it can't be right, every Monday I'm going to do this. You've got to have a level of consistency with it, whereby these things that you plant the seeds on today are going to, you know, deliver in 6, 12, 18 months time. So, you know, when's the best time to kind of plant a tree? It's, you know, it's 50 years ago, but now it's today, you know, that type of analogy. So realistically, it's got to be something that you're continually plugging away at with, you know, a very low expectation of initially of those things actually working, but in time, those, like anything, it just starts to sort of compound. And the more people you're speaking to, the more people you're kind of connecting with. For me, I think a lot of it comes from, you know, and it's something that we'll be talking in the event about, is about giving continual value. So, you know, you've got there's lots of famous books on, you know, on give, jab, and the kind of ask later and all this type of thing. But the principles are really, really sound with that. And I think a lot of it is, you know, it could be even just like a simple introduction, or actually, you know, here's my product. I'll give you a free 2-3 month trial of it, and just kind of trial it and see how it goes. There's no expectation off the back of that. Don't be afraid to give these things away to kind of get people, you know, working with you. I think a lot of it, and certainly when you're going into kind of fundraising, they like to see kind of transactional volume. Well, that can come, but if you try and build up to to that point, if you try and transact early on, you might end up killing some of these potential opportunities. So for me, it's building that kind of credibility. But yeah, you've got to remain consistent with that.
Good stuff. So here's a question that I'm asking. No, not at all. No. Here's a question I'm going to ask, or I am asking all of my interviewees, and that is, what's your ultimate sandwich?
That is an interesting one. It's a bit of a strange one. So for me, I really like salami, cucumber and cheese.
Nice. Cream cheese or
just
cheddar?
Cheddar. I don't even know if there's a name for it. It's just something that we used to have made when I was in the military.
Okay, yeah.
And so since then, it's just kind of stuck with me.
Nice. And what kind of bread? Like, are you going for a bloomer or are you going for just some straight white?
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be a baguette.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's got to be like a nice, warm, freshly made. Like, that would be the ultimate for me, yeah.
Nice. Good stuff.
What about you?
Oh, no, that's a good question. I'm not prepared at all. My ultimate sandwich, there's a shop near me that does something called the New Yorkshire, and it's basically it's a triple stacked pastrami, Emmental, and pickle sandwich, and it's just on a toasted white, just standard white loaf, right? Amazing. Awesome, just like nice crunchiness, nice textures, like it's got everything.
It does sound really put me in the direction of that.
I think he's got some coleslaw in there as well and stuff like that. What I'm trying to do with the question is like build up a library of see if there's like psychology in the ultimate sandwich.
Do you know, I think the whole psychology of like why people start businesses, why people, certainly from my side, why people purchase, why people buy things. If you think about the last 5 things you bought, if you actually really think why, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that, my friend had on my phone, and then I saw it, and then I saw an advert, and there's a hell of a lot of psychology behind it.
There's a lot of nudge as well, isn't there? It's just kind of like there's nothing that's overtly saying buy this thing.
No.
Whereas there is like a lot of stuff that's just kind of like, oh, if you want to be seen, then, this is the thing that you need, isn't it?
It is an interesting one. You can end up diving down a pretty deep rabbit hole with thinking about what was the last decision you made, which was actually your decision.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, good conversation.
No, I've got kids. Just rule the world. So to close out then, like last question, what's next for Mark Cody? What are you on with at the moment? What have you got in the pipeline?
Yeah, so for me, to be honest, I want to continue to doing what I'm really enjoying, which is helping other founders, supporting a lot of businesses. There's a couple of exciting opportunities that I'm working on, which may end up taking some more, if not all, of my resource.
Okay. Good stuff.
But yeah, it's an exciting time because for me, for I can't even remember how long now. You speak to people and I guess not just like a corporate structure, but kind of a job where they're articulating like I've got that Monday feeling. I just never feel that. And I haven't done for years.
Nice.
And I love that feeling of, I'm excited about going and helping people. And I think once you can add value as well, and that, and that comes across in, when I'm seeing businesses kind of continue to follow what I'm doing and growing from the back of that, it's a really exciting feeling. And that's reciprocal with how we all kind of get on as well.
Awesome.
So yeah, long answer.
No, not at all. It's all good, man. It's all good. So thank you very much for coming and doing an interview, and also for talking at the event tonight. That's it for this interview. Thank you all for watching and seeing to the end. The startup meetups, the Barnsley Startup Meetups, every second Thursday of the month. So feel free to come down. I'll put some links in the description below. And other than that, thank you very much.
Cheers.